considered when it comes to creating the right type of person under the right type of conditions a few months into the job. And then it's about the attitude. I've always told my managers, if you hire someone and go through that particular process, you have a shared responsibility to develop them. You can't just come to me after a couple of weeks and say, I don't like this person, I want someone else. You have to be accountable.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back. I know it's been a while. I am Andrew Dupy. I am the host of the Leaders Talk podcast, and I am the head of communications of Leaders Brands. And with me today is Geoffrey Reid. Geoffrey is going to be here telling us a little bit about his book, The Revenue Catalyst. And in that book, Geoffrey is taking on the idea of the fact that there really is a gap between education and sales. And as in, we're not educating people on sales. We love talking about business, but we don't love talking about sales and how you're supposed to do it. And I'm going to let Geoffrey introduce himself here. Geoffrey, hello and welcome. I'm happy to have you here. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself, and then we can kind of deep dive into this.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Really a pleasure to be here, and really honored. It's exciting to be able to join with you and to share with the community a little bit about what's been happening in this journey that I've taken with in being able to to develop a book that I think really does fill a gap in the market when it comes to teaching and describing sales. And I guess
exactly.
Yeah, so look, I guess a big part of the reason why I'm doing this is because I got to a point in my career, with quite a bit of education, quite a bit of experience running a business, and I really knew nothing about sales. And how does one generate revenue? Does one obligate people to buy from them? Do they have a Rolodex where they call people up? Do they respond to requests for proposals? Do they go out to conventions and grease some palms and shake some hands? And how do you turn that into business? And I guess that led me down a journey where I had an opportunity to, after spending years as or in conjunction with starting a business as a university professor, teaching graduate school, really getting into deeply the field of mediation, negotiation, training, and a lot of very important skills that are valuable in business. And that led me to realizing that although we had a tremendous opportunity, we had a tremendous group of people, the market conditions were right. The biggest gap was not knowing enough about sales, and tracing that back, there was really no opportunity after many years of university to learn sales because it's not really being taught. So that led me down the road to deciding that I could either continue not knowing about sales and stumbling my way through it, or take a little bit of a pause in business and go out and try to find out how people do sales. And that led me to doing some research into the market, finding an organization that was renowned for teaching sales to the people for the purposes of from scratch, helping them generate revenues. And I thought, well, even if I did that for a little bit, I would leave. I spent a lot of time not getting paid in university.
Yeah.
Why would this be a bad use of time? So I really did put the pause button on. I found an organization. I took a little bit of a step back in my career to learn sales, and it just so happened that I was good at it. I took the methodology, I took the other things that I knew, and by the end of my first full years in that particular company, I was #1 in North America. It's an organization with 50 offices worldwide, and across North America. I was #1 in new business sales after my first year, and that really paved the way for me to get into management and to eventually become a chief executive officer with that particular organization, with the eye on and the responsibility of generating revenue, which is fundamentally the role of chief executives. But there are millions of chief executives out there that have not been educated on sales and had to stumble their way through the same process. So the purpose of this particular exercise, or one of them, has been to really help fill that gap and to help people understand how they could do that another way without just having to piggyback on an organization that has some good training.
Yeah, I mean, you make such a great point, and I didn't really even think about it myself until I spoke with you earlier, and then kind of thought about my journey into business and into doing sales. Many years now of experience with it, but yeah, I wasn't taught that at first. I always got it after.
Right.
It was when you were hired as the salesman, then you're supposed to learn about it after you do it. And
Exactly.
as someone who was a teacher prior, that's really kind of really backwards.
Indeed.
In the thinking, you're supposed to be trained before you do it, not
Yeah.
get it and then learn. Why do you think that is? That we have that issue?
Well, look, that really became the impetus for the book because
Yeah.
a number of years ago, I had a visit from the president and vice chancellor of the university that I used to teach at. He came to see me in London. I was in the headquarters of our London office as a chief executive, and it was a bit of a farewell tour for Dr. Alan Shepard, who I mentioned in the book, who came to see me, and he was seeing other alumni and people in London. It was their first trip to London, UK, for that purpose, to really expand and reconnect with their community. And one of his first questions was, how are we doing in terms of educating students and preparing them to be good employees for you, after having done a lot of hiring from that university. And I had told them quite well, because the students I had hired had done well, but I asked them, but why no sales? Why is there so little sales education? And he laughed and he said, well, look, professors are just not comfortable teaching things they don't know enough about. And I thought it was just a very simple but profound quote to describe why business schools are structured the way they are. They teach people finance, accounting, human resources, and marketing, which has elements of sales depending upon how you define it. But sales education is lacking, and so look, that really led me down the rabbit hole of every interview I did subsequently with anyone who had attended business school. I would always slip in, did you ever take a sales class? And some would say none, some would say one. And it led me to really formulating this opinion that, look, any business problem can be solved through revenue. It's not just about cost cutting. And a lot of businesses are underperforming because they're not putting enough attention to sales. And any organization that doesn't consider its strongest component to be sales is, in theory, leaving money on the table. So why not come up with a simple way of bridging that gap? And that was really my inspiration to write the Revenue Catalyst.
Yeah, and I think some of it comes a little bit culturally too. I mean, when I was growing up, I learned everything I learned about sales before I got into it by watching my dad do it and watching Glengarry and Glen Ross. and all of and when you in that environment, in the environment of watching salesmen or being with salesmen, you kind of get the idea that they're almost proud of the fact that they can just kind of feel their way through. Is that sign in Glengarry Glen Ross? Salesmen are born, not made. So yeah, I mean, do you feel there's a little bit of an American cultural idea that you're not supposed to necessarily know?
Yeah, look, I often say that is the biggest myth in sales, that salespeople are born, not made. And in the book, I do reference Glengarry Glen Ross for that purpose. I talk about Wolf of Wall Street. I talk about a few other sales books or movies that have really had an impact on our interpretation of sales. And I think that has allowed a lot of CEOs and organizations to call a lot of different things sales that are very, that are extremely different from one another. Sales is a big tent. There's so many things and so many different approaches to sales, and whether one is considering the principle of persuasive sales, which I write about in the book, versus the opposite extreme of resistant sales. Everything in between has its place. And the whole adage that salespeople are born, not made, I think allows people off the hook when it comes to their responsibility to build processes that are predictable, that can take someone with the right attitude and ingenuity and teach them a set of principles and reverse engineer predictable revenues as a result of applying a process. When the processes are pure, the outcomes are pure. And after having done more than 2,000 interviews in my career for people applying for sales positions, I've learned that it's not the fastest talkers, it's not the people with that outgoing personality, the people that seem naturally gifted in sales who necessarily end up winning the race. The slow and steady people who may be a little bit more reserved, maybe a little bit more trusted, maybe, but apply a methodology like it's a science to their approach to generating revenues are often the ones that eclipse the people who have that natural talent. And they're also the ones who's they're not a non-renewable resource. They're going to teach other people a process that they have learned that breaks it down so that anyone can understand it. Whereas someone who's arguably talented in sales is going to be limited in their ability to develop a team of people to do the same thing. They may be the only person who can do it that way, and it might not be taught. So I guess what I'm expressing is that so much is misunderstood about the discipline, and there really was a need and a void in the literature that's out there to really show what that broad spectrum is and how to optimize it.
Yeah. And what surprises me as well is, I mean, it's to go. I like to say that when I talk about Glengarry Glen Ross, I always like to say that it's a cautionary tale, not an instruction manual, because that kind of approach that seems to be the norm pushes salesmen into having at times unethical practices or practices that overpromising, overreaching, doing things, trying to reach into the well of charisma will sometimes get them in trouble. That doesn't help a business, though. That's if you're going to have that kind of first relationship with a long-term or even a short-term client, that's if they don't get what they're promised, if they're overpromised, if it comes into it the wrong way, that's not beneficial for businesses. So it surprises me that they continue to do it.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the gap in sales education, because, depending upon to what extent a company has mastered a unique approach to teach their people, there's going to be huge lost opportunity there, and people doing a lot of things wrong. When you look at salespeople, the criticisms of salespeople, sometimes, someone will, when children are, when we're all little, we're selling, and right. But the only way that we can sell or get things from our parents is being persuasive. Please buy me the sugar cereal, Mom. It's good at the supermarket. It's going to taste great. We can eat it together as a family. Come on, let's buy it. That's how, I used to get things. That's how my brother used to get things as well. And that's the only thing that we know when we're little. And then we become teenagers, and it's about influencing our friends. Let's go here, let's go there. Come on, let's do it. That's persuasiveness. And then people go to business school, they don't learn sales, and then they come out into the workforce and they might get a sales job, and the company will say, go sell. And the only tool that someone has at their disposal is to pressure and create residue through the discomfort that's often created by obligating people to buy from them. Buy from me because my uncle. Buy from me because I call you every month and ask you how your family's doing. That is not a meritorious, self-sustaining system that's going to allow a CEO to justify the purchase. Right. So at the other end of the spectrum, there's the whole principle of resistance. Banks and universities are based on resistance. Why should we give you the loan? Do you have any credit? How do we know you're going to pay us back? We found a blemish on your credit. We're not going to give you the loan, but we will if you pay us a higher interest rate. That's a close, or a university. Why should we let you into our prestigious institution? These are all ways of creating gaps in terms of or that is really represents the gap in terms of style that people have when they approach how to be able to generate revenue. And understanding those two extremes and everything in between is really the key to having the foresight to be able to make good decisions in the moment to optimize the creation of revenue.
Yeah, because exactly, if you have a good relationship with people, if you're actually building a relationship with your sales service, and you're selling a good product instead of trying to force and convince someone, that is highly beneficial to a business, because at that point you're now not only creating customers, but you're creating retention. And you're creating good word of mouth, which means you're creating referral, which means that you're building out even further.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
removing the sense that salespeople are only in it for the money is an important factor. If a salesperson or someone who's responsible for the generation has a higher purpose, and their responsibility is to make good choices that are going to be helpful to their customers, or having the courage to be able to say this product wouldn't be good for you, and maybe you should rethink this, or maybe the timing isn't right, will create sustainability in the relationship that's often necessary for customers to feel that they are being misserved by the advice of a salesperson,
Right.
or that the salespeople are there simply to serve their own interests.
Right.
So
Well,
dispelling those, that
oh,
is
sorry.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that also leads to the problem that a lot of American businesses still do too much, I think, in the area of your commission based. I mean, we
Right.
even have many businesses that go pure commission only.
Yeah.
And I don't think that necessarily serves towards creating a good environment for salespeople, because at that point they almost are forced, because if they don't sell, they have nothing that they have at the end of the month to pay the rent and put the food on the table.
Yeah, look, that's, I think, look, if someone is basically saying go sell and providing no commission, that's going to create a high turnover environment
That's
where
also, yeah, that's the
where
other extreme. Yeah, that's the other problem.
sink or swim. It's not predictable. People are going to be failing in the exercise, and the organization is arguably not taking a sufficient amount of the risk when it comes to and being accountable for that. Whereas a better balance might be, look, I guess there are three types of sales jobs. There are ones that are all base, which are often are lower level retail, that you might get in a store at the shopping mall. There are those that are all commission, that are sometimes real estate or car sales, or some other organizations. And then there are hybrids, ones in between that are part base, part commission, and that find that balance between sharing the responsibility. Look, if the rewards are tremendous and there's training involved in a full commission type environment, and the salesperson, there's predictability around, if they do A, B, and C, they're going to achieve certain outcomes, and they're going to make more money because they're foregoing the commission. That's probably a fair formula, but it's a very difficult one to establish, and there are a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing out there, perhaps selling a big dream, but not necessarily able to follow through once someone gets into the trenches. So being able to do good research into what type of sales organization someone joins, make sure that there is a methodology that's predictable. Arguably, in my book, I could reverse engineer the activities of any one of my salespeople by understanding data, KPIs, and I could have someone say that it's really important for them to make 30 grand next month. And I would say, okay, let's look at your numbers, and I'm going to tell you what you need to achieve in terms of pitch opportunities versus closes and everything in between to be able to achieve that level of income. Let's break that down. That's what our review is going to be about. And if you execute it within a margin of error, you will be within the vicinity. That's what a good organization should be able to do. Everything else is just way too random.
I love it. That's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say, because that's where I was kind of leading you. Because yeah, that's where you can make up the difference, is in that the idea of education. Because if you have a structure, if you have something, rather than the method that I've experienced before, where they say, "Hey, you're not meeting your KPIs this month, so catch up or go." Or instead, someone sitting down and actually having a methodology, having something that they can now turn to. It's like, okay, let's now make it up. Let's find the ways and we can do it. That's why I feel that your ideas are so beneficial overall and can be so helpful. And a lot of our audience right now are also people, most of them are CEOs, entrepreneurs. I'm sure they have sales forces. So what would you tell them right now about what they should be doing that maybe they're not, how do they begin to make this transformative process to being something more education based?
Like, look, a big part of well, there are a few elements that contribute to that: product positioning, the sales process approach that people take to attacking the market that they're in. Those are important factors and chapters that I write about. Choosing the right people under those conditions, with the right attitudes, as opposed to looking for fast talkers or slicksters, might be a choice that people need to make in order to be doing that right. Having a good onboarding plan, having a good review plan and training program are all key elements to being able to create fertile conditions where someone is in the being brought through the chasm of what they don't know because of the lack of sales education to a point where they have a critical amount of information that's sound methodology that they can apply, so that it really comes down to, if someone really, really, really wants to succeed and has the right ingenuity, desire, determination, and capabilities, and the right mental attitude, if all these things are in place, then then it's predictable. And so there are processes that need to be considered when it comes to creating the right type of person under the right type of conditions a few months into the job. And then it's about the attitude. I've always told my managers, if you hire someone and go through that particular process, you have a shared responsibility to develop them. You can't just come to me after a couple of weeks and say, I don't like this person, I want someone else. You have to be accountable. And then what that creates is this shared responsibility when it comes to not just looking at someone's talk time, if it's a job on the phone, and the number of dials, if it's really raw, or the number of it's not just looking at that and saying get that up or you're fired, like you just alluded to. It really is about saying, okay, look, you're not creating the amount of activity that you would need to be able to generate the income that you told me that you want to make in this. Let's break this down. How many people do you need to engage in the right way on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to put yourself within the vicinity? How do you apply a state-of-the-art process each and every time you engage with someone? Are you qualifying the right types of people who are decision makers who can make those decisions? And how are you moving those opportunities along to ripen them so that you're putting them within the vicinity of a close? And what are the closing percentages that would be associated with that amount of activity? Because any sales is going to be a numbers game, but are you closing 1 in 5? You're closing 1 in 10? Sometimes I tell someone, look, with what you're doing, you could work 24 hours a day and it's not predictable that you're going to make a sale. So let's break this down, as opposed to telling them they suck and you're fired. That's the shortcut. So CEOs do have a responsibility to hold people accountable at every level, to do the right things, to develop people. And that goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. We develop salespeople like a sports team would develop an athlete through their process. It's not just about throwing them the ball and saying run it up the field. There's
a lot more that goes into it than that. Well, Geoffrey, this has been very enlightening. I think that there's a lot of material that we've had here that our audience can chew on and think about, and now they can go buy the book, The Revenue Catalyst, and get the full story. But how can our audience find out a little bit more about you?
Look, my website, which is going to be live in the next few days, geoffreymreid.com, has a lot of information on myself and my background and why I'm in a position to be able to talk about these things. It talks about the book and what the book actually does in terms of all the different benefits and what someone should have by the end of reading it. I think it has quite a few reviews because it's been passed around to a preliminary audience, and the feedback's been I've been blessed with beautiful feedback, and it's really reassured me that there is the potential for this to have an impact on people in a positive way, and there is also a way to be able to link to that. So and directly through Amazon and a few other sellers. So I would recommend that would be the best place. There's also buttons through that website to social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc.
Right. Perfect. And ladies and gentlemen, all of those links are going to be provided here down below. So go ahead and click on those, click through, get yourself a copy of the Revenue Catalyst. I think it's going to be a hit. Geoffrey, it was really a pleasure to have you here today, and we wish you the best of luck going forward with us.
I much appreciate it. It's really been pleasurable talking to you, Andrew, and looking forward to the next time.
Fantastic.